My name is Emily, and this is a story I never imagined I'd be telling. It's about how a simple app, Badoo, a platform meant for connection and maybe a bit of romance, became the stage for a terrifying ordeal that changed my life forever. I was 18, just starting my first year at college. My life was a routine mix of classes, study sessions, and the occasional coffee run with friends. I lived in a dorm, sharing my space with a roommate who was hardly ever around. Life was ordinary, safe, and predictable. That was until I downloaded Badoo on a whim, urged by the endless stories of dating adventures from my friends. At first, it was exciting. The app was a kaleidoscope of faces and personalities, each swipe a possibility. I had a few conversations, some bland, some interesting, but nothing that really sparked. Until Alex. Alex's profile was different. He had this mysterious aura about him, photos that were artistic yet enigmatic, a bio that was poetic and intriguing. He was like a puzzle waiting to be solved, and I was drawn in. We matched, and soon enough he sent a message. His words were captivating, laced with humor and intelligence. Our chats became the highlight of my days. He had a way of understanding me, picking up on my moods and always knowing what to say. It was like he had known me for years. We talked about everything, our dreams, fears, our views on the world. It felt surreal, this connection with a stranger, but it was exhilarating. Then, things started to change. It was subtle at first, a comment here, a question there, about my daily routines, the places I frequented. I thought it was just his way of showing interest. But the questions became more specific, his knowledge of my whereabouts more accurate. It was as if he was piecing together my daily life, bit by bit. One night, he sent a message. "You look tired today at the coffee shop, Emily. Rough day?" My heart froze. I had been at that coffee shop, but I never told him. Panic set in. How did he know? I asked him, trying to keep my tone light, but his reply was chilling. "I just know you so well by now." I started to pull back, cutting our conversation short, not sharing as much. But Alex's presence felt inescapable. He knew things I hadn't shared with him, things I couldn't explain how he knew. It was like he was watching me, a shadow lurking just out of sight. The real fear set in when I received a photo from him. It was of my dorm building, taken from a distance. No message, just the photo. My safe haven, my private space, was now exposed. I blocked him immediately, but the damage was done. I felt exposed, vulnerable. I reported the incident to the app, but there wasn't much they could do. Alex was a ghost. His profile vanished, and with it, any trace of his real identity. But the sense of being watched didn't vanish with his profile. I started seeing shadows, feeling eyes on me wherever I went. My life became a series of paranoid glances over my shoulder, of jumping at every unexpected noise. The police were sympathetic, but without any real threat or evidence. Their hands were tied. My friends tried to be supportive, but they couldn't understand the constant fear I lived with. It was a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight, and I was its unwilling star. Sleepless nights became my norm. Every creak of the dorm building a signal of some impending doom. I was trapped in a cycle of fear and anxiety, jumping at shadows, scared of what might be lurking just out of sight. The vibrant college life I had once loved now felt like a maze of potential dangers. Every stranger a possible Alex. The climax came one evening when I was returning from the library. The campus was quiet, the night air cool and crisp. I had that eerie feeling again, like someone was following me. I quickened my pace, my heart racing. And then, I heard it. Footsteps, mirroring mine, but heavier. I didn't dare to look back. I just ran. I reached my dorm, fumbling with my keys, practically throwing myself inside and locking the door behind me. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding against my chest like a drum. I peered out the window, but there was no one there. Just the empty, quiet campus. Was I imagining things? Was the fear making me see danger where there was none? Days turned into weeks, and the fear never left me. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every sound. My friends noticed the change in me. I was no longer the cheerful, outgoing Emily they knew. I'd become a shell of my former self, withdrawn and paranoid. Then, one day, I received an email. It was from an unknown address, and it simply read, "I'm still here, Emily." My heart sank. I knew it was him. Alex. He was still watching me, playing this twisted game. The email contained a picture, this time of me walking in the park. The photo was recent, which meant he was still close, still watching. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped, like a bird in a cage. I changed my routines, tried to stay in crowded places, but the feeling of being watched never left me. It was like Alex had cast a dark shadow over my life, and I couldn't escape it. I started seeing a counselor, hoping to find some way to cope with the constant fear and anxiety. She was kind, understanding, and she listened. But even she couldn't erase the terror that had taken root in my heart. One evening, I decided to confront my fear. I went to the park where the last photo was taken. It was a foolish idea, but I was desperate. I sat on a bench, waiting, watching. The sun set and the park grew quiet. And then, I saw him. A figure in the distance, just standing there, watching me. I froze, fear gripping me. But then, something inside me snapped. I was tired of being afraid. I stood up and started walking towards the figure. As I got closer, I realized it was just a normal guy, not Alex, not my stalker. He looked as surprised to see me approaching as I was to see him. It wasn't Alex. It was just a random person, enjoying an evening in the park. The realization hit me hard. I had let this fear, this paranoia take over my life. Alex, whoever he was, had won. He had made me afraid of my own shadow, of every stranger, of every unknown. But I decided then and there that I wouldn't let him control my life anymore. I started working with the police, providing them with all the information and evidence I had. I became more cautious, more aware of my surroundings, but I refused to let fear rule me. Months passed, and slowly, I started to rebuild my life. I was more careful about my online presence, about the information I shared. I learned to be cautious, but not paranoid. The fear didn't disappear overnight, but it no longer controlled me. Alex never contacted me again. Maybe he got bored, maybe he found another victim, or maybe he just vanished into the digital world from whence he came. I may never know who he was or why he chose me, but I learned a valuable lesson. In the digital age, our lives are more exposed than we realize, and sometimes the monsters we fear are hiding behind a screen, waiting for a chance to strike. So this is my story. It's a warning and a lesson. Be careful who you trust. Be aware of what you share. And always, always listen to your instincts. They might just save you from your worst nightmare. My name is Jackson, and I'm 33 years old. I never believed in fate or destiny. But what happened to me, the terror I experienced, made me question everything I thought I knew. It all started with a single download on Badoo, a decision that seemed harmless at the time, but led me down a path of fear and uncertainty. I was an average guy, living a pretty normal life in a small city. By day, I worked as a graphic designer, and by night, I was just another face in the crowd at local bars and clubs. Dating had never been my strong suit. My friends often joked about my bad luck in love, so when they suggested I try Badoo, I figured why not? Maybe it was time to shake things up. Setting up my profile, I felt a mix of excitement and skepticism. I swiped through profiles, some catching my eye, others not so much. Then I matched with her. Let's call her Sophie. Sophie's profile was mesmerizing. Her pictures showed a vibrant, beautiful woman with a captivating smile. Her bio was witty and full of life, just like her. Hit it off immediately. Our chats were full of laughter and deep conversations. It was refreshing, talking to someone who seemed to get me. Sophie had a way of making me feel seen, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. We talked about everything. Our jobs, our past relationships, our dreams for the future. It felt like a connection I had been missing my whole life. But then, things started to get weird. Sophie began asking odd questions, things about my daily routines, my friends, even my past relationships. Her curiosity seemed intense, but I brushed it off as her being interested in me. However, her questions became more intrusive, her messages more frequent and demanding. It reached a point where she knew things about me that I hadn't told her. She mentioned a bar I frequented, a gym I went to, even my favorite coffee shop. I felt like she was tracking my movements, watching me from the shadows. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was being stalked. I confronted her, and her response sent chills down my spine. I just want to be close to you, Jackson. Is that so wrong? Her words were obsessive, her tone unnerving. I blocked her immediately, but that only made things worse. Sophie started showing up in places I was at. I would see her across the street, at the coffee shop outside my office. Every time I saw her, my heart would race, and a sense of dread would wash over me. She was like a ghost, appearing and disappearing, always watching. I reported her to the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do without concrete evidence. My friends told me to ignore her, that she would eventually get bored and move on. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being hunted. The situation escalated one night when I came home to find a note pinned to my door. "I'm always here for you, Jackson," it read. That's when I knew I wasn't safe, not even in my own home. I started staying with a friend, too scared to be alone. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every sound, every shadow made me jump. I was living in a constant state of fear, looking over my shoulder, afraid of what Sophie might do next. Months went by, and the sightings of Sophie became less frequent, but the damage was done. I was a changed man, no longer the carefree, optimistic guy I once was. I had become cautious, always wary of new people I met, especially online. I never heard from Sophie again. Maybe she moved on. Maybe she got the help she needed. I don't know. But her presence lingered in my life, a constant reminder of the terror I experienced. This is my story. A warning to anyone who thinks online dating is just fun and games. Be careful who you trust. Keep your personal information private. And always listen to your gut. It could be the difference between a simple swipe and a nightmare that follows you everywhere.